Senate investigators William Traynor and Mary Westmoreland spent about an hour discussing ground rules for their investigation with Governor Nigh and OSBI leaders. The State Bureau of Investigation has already launched its own probe into child abuse charges at state-run facilities. But state law prohibits the Bureau from releasing its findings to anyone except the governor. There had been speculation that restriction might hamper the Senate investigators, but Governor Nigh says all parties have agreed to cooperate.
They're to carry on their discussions with the OSBI. If they feel and the OSBI don't reach an agreement, they're to reissue their inquiry to the OSBI to make sure they understand it correctly. If they're still not satisfied, and if it's necessary, they can take it one step further by contacting me, and we'll help them work it out. But the orders are, and the unanimous agreement was, total cooperation.
The Senate probers seem satisfied with the governor's promise.
He and his attorney were very helpful in just getting things sorted out, and we feel that our investigation is on track as a result of the governor's efforts.
The U.S. Senate investigators will remain in Oklahoma throughout this weekend, and Action 4 has learned that the researchers plan to make some unannounced visits to some state-run juvenile institutions this weekend as they continue to collect information for their upcoming Senate subcommittee hearing. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the state capitol. Senate investigators William Traynor and Mary Westmoreland spent about an hour with Governor Nigh and OSBI leaders. The State Bureau of Investigation is conducting its own probe of the child abuse charges. There's been some concern the OSBI investigation might hinder the Senate probe, since by law, the Bureau cannot share its findings with outside agencies. But after their meeting, all sides agreed to cooperate as fully as possible.
We cannot, for example, give to this committee any information that we might find under OSBI. They are prohibited by law, and it's not anything that this administration is trying to keep underground. We're prohibited from doing it. But as far as the files to which we are going to investigate, that we can try to work with them to make sure that they know the ones that we're looking at, so that they'll know if they're the same or not.
The Senate investigators seemed pleased with Nye's promises.
Looking at this thing in exactly the same way, but the governor was just extremely helpful in settling some differences and negotiating ground rules, if you will, for how all the parties involved in this meeting today will conduct themselves, and we feel he's just been very helpful to us.
The investigators are expected to interview dozens of people over the next few days before touring state-run juvenile institutions this weekend. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the state capitol.
Nope, it's not a ball game getting over, nor a symphony or concert letting out in downtown Oklahoma City. It's the final mad dash for the post office. Thousands of people maneuvered their way to the downtown location last night to assure their income tax forms got stamped with the appropriate seal April the 15th. The post office made it as simple as possible for these latecomers, offering curbside service. And from the looks of things, if they'd been working for tips, the postal workers would have made a fortune. In fact, they think the procrastinators would save money by staying home.
It's probably less than the gas it costs them to get down here.
What is the penalty?
1%, I believe, against their return. Thank you.
Do you find it strange that they're all coming in at the last moment?
No. Everybody likes to be first or last.
What are the reasons for racing the deadline? Well, here are a few that may or may not be justified. Why have you waited so late to mail your income tax?
I'm a lazy bum. I just don't like doing my income taxes. I've done them about 3 weeks ago, and I've been sitting on my table for 3 weeks. What can I say?
That's how I want some money for this one.
We don't want to pay till the last minute.
Well, it really wasn't my fault. I turned my income tax to my CPA 2 months ago, and he just got them to me 30 minutes ago. That's my reason.
For those of you who got caught in the crunch this year, had to put up with the long lines and nervous tension of beating the clock, do yourself a favor. Next year, start earlier. Carol Lambert, Action 4 a.m. at the Oklahoma City Downtown Post Office.
The Oklahoma Tax Commission expected to be flooded with tax forms, but this year employees were nearly drowned. By the end of this week, about 800,000 tax returns will have arrived at the Commission's office. Workers will have to work 6 days a week and 10 hours a day in order to stay on schedule. And officials say the average number of forms to be processed will be around 45,000 a day. But if you got your forms in the mail last night and hope for a quick return, better not count on it.
It'll be a while before they get them back. I would say 7 to 8 weeks on a refund that was filed yesterday.
Most of the returns that arrived on the deadline date are usually from people who owe money. If you are expecting a refund and haven't filed your taxes yet, there will not be a penalty charge when you do file. Tax officials have made a request of taxpayers for next year that will probably be ignored as past history has shown. They're asking just for once for people to try and mail tax forms in earlier. Ed Stewart, Action 4, the Oklahoma Tax Commission.
Twas an enchanted afternoon at the duck pond. The warm spring air spawned romantic visions of days gone by, recalled no longer from memory, but from books. It was a time of wistful lovers and courageous fighters. But visions are rarely perfect, and at the OU Medieval Fair, the past was infiltrated by the present and the future.
Looks like it'd probably be a person that will.
Nonetheless, it may have been magic.
I'm Scott Wallace. Each year, new skyscrapers pop up on the Oklahoma City horizon. Some of the buildings are going up downtown, others are being built out here on the northwest side. Oklahoma City has never experienced a towering inferno type of disastrous high-rise fire, but each new skyscraper increases the likelihood one could break out. Fortunately, the new structures must adhere to strict safety standards. Those are standards which mandate sprinkler systems and pressurized stairwells. Those safety devices should help the fire department keep any minor fires from getting out of hand.
Truthfully, we don't have a lot of experience fighting high-rise fires. We've been very fortunate in not having to fight a lot of them. But in the last 2 months, we've had a major fire at the Regency and now a major fire at City National, and really both operations have gone very successfully. Our people pre-plan these buildings. They pre-plan what they'll do, when they'll do it, how they'll do it. They survey the buildings to know exactly what's there, where all the standpipe equipment is located and that kind of thing. And we realize that pre-planning is the key to a successful firefighting and rescue operation, and based on these two most recent episodes, that seems to be paying off for us.
Of course, luck also plays a big part in fighting any fire. Lady Luck certainly was on the fire department's side on Sunday. The City National Tower was nearly deserted, and the blaze broke out on the building's 7th floor, just in reach of the department's tallest ladders. You could almost call Sunday's fire practice for the fire department, and we all improve with practice. Scott Wallace, Action 4, downtown Oklahoma City.
I checked on the one lady, you know, and she was hurt real bad on the head. And I asked her, you know, was there anybody else in the car? And she couldn't answer me and stuff. And I went and looked in the car, and the other gal was in the car. So I pulled her out and got her away from the car. I didn't know whether, you know, something, the car might go up or something. I tried to get her, you know, told her friend was laying over here to come help me with her friend. And she was okay for a while. I didn't even know this lady was laying over here.
Call a special session while the legislature is still in session. I give you a hip. My vote is that while I believe in the separation of church and state, I think the state has a responsibility for the care of people with special needs. Licensing is a part of that, whether it be in a child home, a nursing home, a mental retarded halfway house. I don't think that we should tell a group that when we have not been able to define what a religious group is, that any group that wants to call itself a religious group could go out and without a license put up some kind of home.
The speculation that this helicopter crash was the result of sabotage is not what happened. Federal investigators have not pinpointed the exact cause of the crash, but can say without a doubt no one had tampered with the aircraft before it took off with its 3 passengers. The wreckage is still being looked at piece by piece at several places in the country. An Oklahoma City pilot who operates a helicopter service talks about the sabotage claims in the aircraft.
He was involved in transporting people out of West Germany, or out of East Germany, and that he did make some trips over the Berlin Wall with a helicopter, and as a result of that, someone may have sabotaged this helicopter. But that's been some time ago. And I feel like that if they were out to get Barry Meeker for what he did in Germany, that it probably would have taken place a long time ago. And I think it's just so remote a possibility that, I'm satisfied with what the investigators have found so far, that they've ruled out that possibility.
The Bell 222 is a luxury helicopter with a selling price of $1.5 million. A Bell spokesperson told Action 4 Bell stands by whatever it bills and claims there are not many helicopters built better than this one. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at the Wiley Post Airport.
Despite the puddles and threatening weather, the crowds rolled out for this year's Arts Festival. Dreary weather kept some folks home Saturday, but several thousand arts lovers sneaked back in for the last day of the show.
Okay, that one is $6.50 and the tax is $6.75 all told. Yeah, I've got 25 cents if you need it. Take time out from my little babies here.
1981 was a banner year for festival artists. Most exhibitors felt it would be tough to top, but as things wound down, it was clear 82 would be even better.
I just can't hardly tell you how much better, but we've done a lot better. Last year I didn't think we'd do any better than that because it was a great year for us then too. But this year has been a much better year.
Despite the weather?
Despite the weather.
Okay.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Would you like to eat my microphone?
It reminds me of a big worm. Thank you. That was delicious.
Just like Stomper, it's a safe bet the crowds will be hungry for another arts festival next year. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the Arts Festival.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
The words of the Black National Anthem are words of faith and hope. But according to national surveys, most blacks have little faith in the Reagan administration, and they're losing hope for a better way of life. Georgia State Senator Julian Bond used that theme in his speech before more than 200 people at the 8th Annual Black Student Awards Banquet at the University of Oklahoma.
For over a year, we've been governed by people who oppose abortion and support the death penalty, apparently believing life begins at conception and ends at birth. They intend, if they can, to rearrange the United States to fit their sterile vision, to force conformity with their small minds and smaller dreams.
Bond mesmerized his audience with his criticism of Reaganomics and the people who favor it.
The last time the market system provided full employment for you and me was over 100 years ago. It was called slavery then. For these people, equal opportunity means a better than even chance for minorities and women to be out of work.
Julian Bond and the people here are sending a message to the White House. They're telling Ronald Reagan that if he runs again in 1984, he'll be in for the fight of his political life. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Norman.
FAA Academy officials don't like to use the word pressure, but they still have to train about 6,500 air traffic controllers just to replace those that walked off the job last August. A new group of students come in each week. Classes range in size from 70 to 200. In all, there are 1,600 students in daily attendance, learning how to keep radar blips from running into each other. What's needed to get these students out of training and into their jobs is time.
At 1,600 in daily attendance, we expect to maintain sufficient graduates through the next year to 2 years to reach the goal set with the administrator and thus fill the pipeline totally by the end of about 2 years.
The controversy over the possibility of altered test scores has not been settled yet. Weaver says the Academy is waiting for the results of a government investigation before they will comment on the subject any further. Meanwhile, the Academy has graduated about 1,200 students since the strike. That's a far cry from the 11,000 controllers who quit, but the Academy says they're working on it. Ted Brown, Action 4 at the FAA Academy.
The calm surface of this country pond reflected the angry fire of an oil well blowout. The well, located 16 miles west of El Reno, blew between 7:30 and 8 o'clock Thursday night. Residents within a 5-mile radius of the well were evacuated as the flames crackled against the canvas of a jet black sky. Eyes eventually adjusted to the bright light, but the roar of the blowout pierced the evening stillness. Law enforcement officials blocked roads leading to the well. Only those who knew how to fight a blowout were welcome. This hotel was crowded early in the evening, but by 10 p.m., the only sign of life was a half-empty Pepsi bottle. Canadian County authorities had moved the guests out. They were worried that the Tenneco Company site could erupt with vicious force. As representatives of Great Plains Oil and Gas Company, the company that drilled the rig, looked on, workers began their efforts to control the blaze.
They've got 3 torches going, or 3 blowout preventers, and it's real hot, lots of light, and the valves are giving way on them is what the problem is right now. That's the reason they're having to go back with other lines.
By 3:30 Friday morning, the tide turned in favor of the firefighters. Although the fire is expected to burn for at least 2 more days, control specialists predicted the well wouldn't blow. The Highway Patrol opened area highways, and the hotel was once again open for business. Amazingly, no one was injured. As the chances for disaster diminished, it was almost possible to appreciate the sinister beauty of an angry fire reflected in a country pond. Bill Ross, Action 4 in Canadian County.
The Broadway Extension can be a driver's nightmare. It's said to be Oklahoma City's busiest street, and during the daylight hours, the traffic seldom seems to die down. There are some concerned small school children are crossing the extension as a means of a shortcut to class. and officials at the North Highland Fifth Year Center are on the lookout for children crossing the busy road. They are reminded of scenes like this recent accident, where a child ended up with a broken leg after being struck by a car. Even though it didn't happen on the Broadway Extension, the likelihood is greater on the extension. The North Highland principal says there is supervision to watch the children, but a barrier is needed.
There is no fence on the Broadway Extension. Nothing to keep children from crossing before school and after school. The few times that we have seen them early in the morning, we tracked some down and they were going to another school. Now we talked to the children, and as far as we know, it has not been happening since.
The principal adds most students are smart enough to cross only the residential streets. Ed Stewart, Action 4 at the North Highland Fifth Year Center.
A former legal brief dealt with whether or not a divorced woman could collect life insurance proceeds on the death of her ex-husband if she was still the named beneficiary on his policy. My response was that she could if she still had an insurable interest in his life, such as depending on him for child support or alimony payments. However, Mark Thompson with Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company called my attention to the fact that a person may name and maintain anyone as their beneficiary of their life insurance, and no insurable interest is necessary to be named as a beneficiary. However, before the woman could have taken out a policy on her husband's life, she would have had an insurable interest in his life, but once the policy is issued, the termination of that interest does not invalidate the policy. My thanks to Mr. Thompson for his accurate observations. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A Lindsay viewer says that he and his brother believe there's an old bank account that their deceased father opened in the Ardmore Bank back in the 1920s. What rights, if any, would they have to the money if they could locate it? Well, if the money were still in the account, you would perhaps be entitled to it as the heirs to your father's estate. However, it was probably transferred to the state of Oklahoma years ago. Oklahoma has adopted the Uniform Disposition of Unclaimed Property Act, which provides, among other things, that bank accounts in which there's been no activity, such as deposits or withdrawals or correspondence to the bank about the account, in over 14 years, will be considered unclaimed or abandoned property. These accounts are reported to the Oklahoma Tax Commission, who publishes a notice of them, and if unclaimed, the funds go to the state of Oklahoma. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. Tenants, beware of the old mirror in the shower trick. 3 Phoenix, Arizona tenants recently sued their landlord for invasion of privacy after it was discovered that the landlord, who lived in an adjoining apartment, had remodeled the tenant's residence and installed a one-way mirror with peephole in their shower. The peephole was discovered when the lights in the tenant's bathroom were accidentally turned out and a faint glimmer of light shone through the shower compartment mirror. The jury, obviously sympathetic, awarded the tenants $87,500 in compensatory and punitive damages. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A viewer says the other day I saw an ad in the newspaper for a car-top carrier and trailer for less than $100. But when I got to the store to buy one, the clerk said that was only the price for the carrier, and the trailer itself was another couple of $100. Since they advertised it that way, can't they be forced to sell it to me at the advertised price? No. Generally, a newspaper or other type of ad is not considered a formal offer upon which a contract can be based. The offer is made when you present the item to the clerk with your payment, and the contract is formed when the payment is accepted. Since the payment was not offered nor accepted in this case, there was no contract. However, the result is different if the ad requires you to do something before becoming eligible to purchase an item, such as be one of the first 10 people at the store. Then, if you comply with the requirement, a contract has been formed and the store is obligated to sell you the item at the advertised price. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A Shawnee viewer writes in and says, I'm from Texas and have a Texas will. However, I spend 4 months of the year out of state, mostly in Oklahoma, visiting my daughter. If an out-of-stater dies while in Oklahoma, does Oklahoma have any rights to any part of his estate? Well, the answer would generally be no. If you die while domiciled in Texas, that is, Texas is your home, and it is not your intent to live permanently elsewhere, such as Oklahoma, then your will would be probated in Texas, and your estate taxes would be paid to the state of Texas, and Oklahoma would not have an interest in your estate. The answer would be different, however, if no one could tell where you were domiciled. Then the state in which you died could raise a claim to your estate taxes. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs. A Stillwater viewer writes and says the major portion of her assets, such as her home, her money market certificates, and bank and passbook accounts, are held in joint tenancy with her husband. She wants to know if these assets, upon the death of one of the parties, would have to be probated, and whether her attorney would have a percentage claim on the total amount. Joint tenancy property generally does not have to be probated, but passes automatically to the surviving joint tenant. A procedure to judicially recognize the death and to sever the joint tenancy will be necessary, but this does not amount to a full probate. Further, an attorney would not have a claim against the estate except for that which you have agreed to pay him for his services, so be sure that is agreed upon before he begins work. For Action 4, this is Ray Vaughn with Legal Briefs.